It's us. We're here.
Here we are.
Pat, you want to kick things off?
Yeah, let's do it. All right, we are on episode 6 of We're Gonna Need a Bigger Windmill after our episode 5.5, where we looked at hardcore mini golf earlier in the week. We're back to Holey Moley. On this Friday night, I am Pat Sheridan from the website The Putting Penguin, mini golf course review. I am also a professional miniature golfer, play in many national and international events, and I was a contestant on season 1 of Holey Moley, so that's why I am here talking about this wonderful show this evening, and my co-host on We're Gonna Need a Bigger Windmill is next to me.
That's me. My name is Tom Loftus, known as Mr. T, and do a couple of putts, a mini golf website with my wife where we review courses and we travel around, and we also do design and consulting on mini golf courses. And much like Pat, I was also a contestant on season 1 of Holey Moley, and we're trying out this new thing. The technology feels like it's working right, and we got some good tips on this StreamYard thing, and I gotta say I like it. The ticker and everything's like a lot, so I hope I hope we'll get some comments. It looks like we might have already got some comments. Hello to the other person watching. Let's see what that looks like. Hey, look at that.
Fancy.
And then
that was just me.
Oh, look at that, Pat. Both hosting and watching. Look at this. This is multimedia at its best. But let's jump into the show and let's welcome our guest, Matt Goldberg. Welcome, Matt.
Howdy.
We're going to jump into Holey Moley in a second with you, but just give us a quick background before we talk with you later.
Well, my name's Matt Goldberg. I live right near Los Angeles, California. I'm a realtor here. I have a beautiful wife and an amazing child who's 2 years old. And I'm turning 40 next month. And so this was like this whole thing was like a 40th birthday to myself. Like, what can I do to end the last decade or kick off the next decade? That's going to be a memory that's going to stick with me. And people are going to be like, that at one time he did kind of cool, crazy stuff. And so that was kind of the whole predicate for doing the show.
That must be the way to do it, because I turned 40 a month after my episode aired.
Boom. I'm saying.
Yeah, I was a little, what was that? It had been, I'm losing track of my age. It was 42 or 41 technically when it happened. But we were, my wife was my fiance at that time, and we were both on. So we did it a month before kicking things off. And yeah, we brought on Matt because he has a special background because he was on this season of Holey Moley and is going to be able to give some firsthand experiences into the episodes. And we are going to kick things off with round 1. And Pat, you're up first.
Yep, we got our favorite hole for our 12-year-old selves, which is probably appropriate given what mini golf is really geared toward. It's the second time we've seen Uranus on the show this season, and actually it's pretty decent to kick off. We had Chelsea and Sarah both tied to golf. One was a retired pro golfer at 34, which I'd like to retire from something at 34, I think. And that was Chelsea, and Sarah was 22 and a golf fitness instructor, and pretty much looked like she probably could have kicked my butt up and down, not only on the golf course but in the gym. She squats like 275 or 300, she was saying, and I was just blew me out of the water. So they went up. Sarah had the first go, pretty good run at it, missed the channel, had a really bad bounce, kicked her out into the sand, and we got to see for the first time actually people do the planets, because the first time we saw the episode, or the first time we saw the hole on an earlier episode, there was a hole-in-one to kick things off, so we didn't see anybody go across the planets. This time Sarah made an attempt and fell on the second one, didn't really get a good landing on the second one. Then Chelsea went up, actually hit the channel, had a pretty close run at the ace, and then, as this picture will show, did pretty good leapfrogging across the planets, just took it really slow, one by one, landed them, made a nice jump at the end, and without having the penalty stroke, she had a nice, simple tap in two, and Chelsea was our first person to go to round two, which brought us to the second hole, and one that Matt is very familiar with.
Yeah, this was my first hole that I on the first episode of this season, and it brought back some really incredible memories. Every time I've seen putt the plank happen, it just reminds me of like this thrill, this rush of being out there and jumping onto sharks. So in this round, we had Cynthia Navis and Jessie Tang, both of whom are professional in the world of golf in one way or another. I believe Cynthia is an instructor with many accolades over multiple decades in the golf world, and Jessie is also she didn't go to a professional tournament actually to be a part of this show so that she could be in the running for the biggest prize in mini golf history, as she said. So they putt the plank, and as everybody who watches the show knows, you go up and over the hull and try to get as close to the X as you can. And Jessie, it seemed that she didn't make her putt all the way up and around the hull. It kind of came back on her. And so I think by default, Cynthia was closest to the X. And good old Long John Lovitz, he tipped the balls. They looked like a couple of wild shots, but they bounced really nicely. And both of the women were lying really good shots there. So next up was, actually walking the plank and jumping onto the shark. Cynthia was the first one. And I know that for me, when I stood up there and I watched the pace of the shark, it was going a lot faster than I expected. And also further away than I originally thought it might be. So I knew that I had to run and jump to get the right timing and to get the right loft. And Cynthia took off flat-footed from the very edge. So she barely just hung on to that tiny little fin on the shark's back, which that detail, props to the Holey Moley set creators, and the budget got increased so they could put that perfect detail so she could get that grip. She got enough, and she got drug in circles for a while. But then the G-force and the cold, and you could see like the despair in her eyes, and she ultimately lost her grip. Jessie stepped up next, and she got what I thought was a better approach. Her jump was higher, it had more velocity, and she got up to the big dorsal fin, but her legs were like tucked up into her chest, and she kind of lost her grip immediately and bounced off. On the green, it was pretty straightforward. Jessie putted first. She put a little too much sauce on her putt. It hugged the lip and just settled down a couple inches away, and Cynthia stood up confidently. She found her line and put it in and made her way to round two.
Indeed. And that's me. I'm on the next hole, and we have Kevin Van Duzer versus Terrence Red on Volcano. And as you can see, Volcano is the hole that combines a mix of plinko and zip line. You set your position on where you're going to putt on the other side of the water in the plinko game by putting it up, and you have a couple different options there: pole position, rough, and the hazard, which is the sand. And then you have to go flying on, as you can see Kevin up there, on a zip line across. The first one up, Kevin, motivational coach, and he was a former coach, but I'm assuming maybe he was a golf coach. I don't know if that was clear. I didn't catch it.
I actually have some insight on that. We'll talk about it later.
Sweet. Well, Kevin hits it up, gets it in the pole position, and in some ways he was smart on the zip line by not taking it in the pole position, because he went flying at that pole, got those knees up, and bailed. And you know what? It wasn't that bad of an idea, because our next competitor, Terrence, did not fare so well on the putt up. He got it in the rough, so in that thick turf, and went for it at that pole and just went all in, like right middle section, just grabbed that pole and landed it. It was incredibly painful to watch, but he took that zip line and landed it perfectly. Second person of the season to land it, and was just unbelievable. So you have Kevin, who fell in the water and has the pole position, and you have Terrence, who doesn't have that stroke penalty, and Terrence just threw it away fast. His putts were off by a lot. He's said he can do it all. He's an MC, dancer, and everything. Seems like cool dude. I like the shirt and pants combo, but the putts were really far off, like 4 feet, like to the side. It was just like very clear that he wasn't going to win it. He hacked at it a couple times, and then Kevin hit his first one in, and also moves on to the second round, and that takes us back to Beaver Creek for the first round.
Yeah, so Beaver Creek, our favorite punching bag of Rob Riggles in terms of the episode. I think that's where the money came from for that little fin on the shark on Putt the Plane. The Beaver Creek budget, if you were asked Mr. Riggle. But this is the second time we've seen this, and we had Josh up against Tiger with a Y, which is always a very good, appropriate golfing related name. Josh was a 40-year-old golf clothing person. The interesting part that I want to circle back to is playing mini golf with his grandma, who was 92, which I thought was pretty awesome. And Tiger was 22 and basically just looking for money for a new truck, which I also appreciated, because what else are you going to do at 22 with $250,000 if you win it, right?
Especially in Utah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, like, he was set up.
You got to have a truck in Utah.
So they went out. Josh, I thought, he had the good first putt, hit the center of the 3 branches on the tree, ran across the rolling log pretty easily. Tiger followed that up and got the left branch, which in both the cases we've seen, the left branch has not left terrible putts. Definitely makeable from where they were. He ran across as well. We have yet to see anybody fall on Beaver Creek, which is also maybe why people are making fun of it, because there's not a lot of action on there yet. But they both got across. Tiger hit his putt very solidly, carded the 2, put a lot of pressure on Josh, and he wasn't able to take it down. So Tiger came in as our 4th person to move on to round 2. I think will bring us back to you, Matt, right?
Yeah. So now we've got first hole in round 2 is Chelsea taking on Cynthia. Pink bow and all pink outfit going head to head. I think that this was the best entrance of anything that I've seen this season so far, because both ladies came in riding horses in their full night gear. So I thought that was dope. So kind of running through this hole again, you stand up right in front of a drawbridge. You got 3 ways to enter in small holes. The center one gives you a shot at a hole-in-one, which is pretty typical of mini golf. But while you're standing there, there's a gaggle of dragons. Is that how what's the group? A gaggle?
That sounds right.
A flock of like Game of Thrones to tell us.
Right. A dungeon of dragons. There it is. Just spitting fire as you're putting the putt through. And then when you get to the other side, there's humps, or as Rob Riggle called them, there's graves. There are treasure chests and things like that, kind of creating all these different obstacles and alleyways you got to go through. So Cynthia, who was our lady in pink, she stepped up but seemed immediately distracted by all the fire. Immediately distracted. So as soon as they hit her with the first blast, she was kind of out of sorts. She did make it through to the other side, through the middle, but it took her 2 shots to do that. And her ball cozied up to the treasure chest obstacle on the other side. Even with that, she still left herself with a pretty decent 3rd shot. Chelsea, on the other hand, seemed totally comfortable getting burned to a crisp. She stepped up with poise. Her first shot, she went to the left and got it through in the first attempt. And her her next shot, her second shot, so she was laying 1 while Cynthia was laying 2. Her second shot did not set her up well because she was behind 2 humps and an odd angle, and it was just not pretty for her. But luckily, Cynthia was still out of sorts. They had to help her get her helmet off and get some of the heat out, help her breathe a little bit. Everybody backstage who had done Dragon's Breath said there was just, it was like being in a steam shower. You couldn't see anything, and that it was one of the craziest asks when it comes to making a shot like this. So while Cynthia needed medical attention, Chelsea was kind of locking in. She bounced it off the moguls, but put herself in good position. And so they were tied at that point, 2-2. Cynthia was up next, and she asked for a little bit of relief because her ball was really close to the treasure chest. She pushed her ball just left on her third shot, tapped it in on her fourth shot, and Chelsea just lined it up and sunk it on her third shot, which gave her the win, and it punched her ticket to the final round.
And then that brings us, if I'm correct, to our next time seeing Dutch Courage, where we have Kevin and Tiger, who advanced from the first round, that faced off. As you can see, there was the usual getting whacked. Tiger actually went first, one of the 2 people this year that actually dove through the windmill, made it all the way through, both of them without getting knocked off. Kevin didn't have as good of luck. His kids on hand watched him get really knocked on that first windmill. He tried to do the dive like Tiger, but as we'll find out later, Tiger's got a little bit of speed behind him. He showed it on Beaver Creek and definitely made that quick dive on Dutch Courage. That gave him the advantage and a stroke up. They both had, the uphill battle at the second half of Dutch Courage to get it in, and Tiger missed his first one, and then Kevin stepped up and really stuck it to him. Went right over the cup and had that little comeback, beautiful finish. And Tiger comes in, gets it up the uphill, and nails it. It was super, super impressive. And you can see them lining it up, and they go to a sudden death. And I have to say, I'll probably mention this later, the 2 had some really nice camaraderie and back and forth. It was a really nice match. And Tiger stepped up, popped in the first of the sudden death, and Kevin just pulls a little bit short. So we have our final set for the episode, which we are going to turn over to our guest. It is Chelsea Kennard and Tyler Riggs on hole number 2, which, if you've seen in past episodes, I always hold up this because I got a hole number 2 sign. So we're at the final match of the episode, hole number 2, and we brought an expert in to talk about it. Matt, you want to take this one?
Hole number 2, yeah, knocked the crap out of me, but you just can't stay away from the puns with hole number 2 or Uranus. It's just impossible. So I thought here this was the most even matchup. Neither player had been in the water yet. They'd avoided that on both of their previous holes. And they didn't waste very many putts either. They were really they were dialed in for the most part in what they were doing. So hole number 2, we've got all 8, I believe, 8 porta potties with the doors facing out to the lake. And the doors, well, you got to putt past the doors on something that's about 1.5 feet. I think I measured it at 16 inches wide, which for somebody who's got shoulders that are well beyond 16 inches wide makes it difficult to run as fast as you can. So you putt down a 30-foot runway past these things, and then you chase your ball. Essentially, they give you 15 seconds in which a green light will turn on. They don't say ready, set, go. They just say somewhere in these 15 seconds, the green light will turn on, and then you have 3.5 seconds to run across this thing. And I was like, that's Usain Bolt territory. Like, I can't even run a 40 that fast. And then you have to factor in my reaction time to this green thing. It's just nuts. So I didn't stand a chance. But then when you get to the other side, the green has its own havoc. It's got some obstacles on there. It's got some humps. And it's got an open edge. So if you go towards the water, there's nothing there to stop it. It's just going to run off into the water. So to gameplay, Chelsea's putt had a really nice line, but not enough of the power it needed to make it all the way down the green. The putt made it about 2/3 of the way down the 30-foot runway, but it ended up leaving her far enough away from some of the obstacles to have a really good line for her second shot. And then when she ran across, Joe bet $5 to Rob that she wasn't going to make it. And no sooner did the sentence leave his mouth than she blitzed across, stayed dry, and Joe handed over that crisp $5 bill over to Rob. Tiger's putt had all the pace that it needed, but it ended up like right on the back of that restroom sign that was sitting there. What do you guys call that? Anything that kind of sits in the middle like that?
It's usually an obstacle.
Obstacle.
I'm going to go with obstacle. Choice C. Tiger was even faster than Chelsea. I mean, talk about his quickness. He was a blur. So they both made it over there totally dry. Chelsea, her second shot was just like on the money. She squeezed it in a really tight spot on the water side of the obstacle, but she only had maybe 6 or so inches, maybe a bigger, I don't know. I'm measuring with, moving on. She got it right up against the hole and left herself with just a few inches. And she tapped it in, and then she put all the pressure on Tiger. So his second shot was also masterful in its own right because he cleared the sign, put himself in really good position to have a relatively straight putt over one hump. And he only missed it to the left by a few inches. But just like that, he couldn't force a playoff. His game was over, and Chelsea advanced herself to the championship round.
Now, was there, because you've played that hole, I watched his second shot, and as a mini golfer, I obviously stood there and went, okay, what would I do in this situation?
Yeah.
And I was trying to figure out if he would have been better off going back towards the porta potties to give him the sign, or was there enough room between the hump and the sign to have a line of sight of the hole, or did he basically was going to hit the hump if he got to the end? Because that was the other thing. I was like, well, if you tapped it about 6 inches, you would take the hump out of play.
Sure. Coming from that hard kind of 45-degree angle that he had, I wouldn't have chanced it going towards the water, because just the slightest bit too much and you're off, and then you're in the drop zone, which is where I played from. 2 humps. It's almost impossible when you're only 1 or 2 shots away from each other. So I think that he made the right play going the other direction. But with that 45-degree angle, there was like, the hump was very much like any speed bump in a neighborhood, but the side of it was a flat side. And I can't imagine that he would have had enough room to navigate that expertly.
Yeah, you can't tell from the camera angles at this shot.
Yeah.
But you're right. He made an amazing run at it from where he was. It was about as straight as he could have been.
And that last shot was just a few inches away. And it seemed like it had the right pace to me, that if it was on the right line, to have a chance to drop.
And there's been a lot of people that have had to, that have taken shots at that where they had way less pressure, or that they just needed to get it over there and really ran it far past. Yeah. And understandably, we'll talk a little bit more. I think we get into it with how you played some of those holes and kind of getting some of your thoughts and feedback on them. But that's really hard. I think, it's hard to tell, like, if there's, it looked like there's a wall maybe over, if you're facing like where the flag is towards the water, like a wall to your left, but it's still, you don't have a lot of wiggle room, that if you hit it a little bit too far, and you get, lose control, that you're going to be back in that water. And if you're back in that drop zone, I mean, that you're done. I mean, you have those 2 humps and forget about it. Yeah.
I know all about it. From every hole that we've seen played, or that, I got the pleasure to play, I think that this one has the most golf to it. I think all the other ones, they put you in precarious scenarios, but this one, I think that with that 30-foot putt, keeping it on a narrow line and trying to navigate all the other obstacles there, I think there was a lot more strategy on the golf side on this one than some of the other ones that I've seen. Maybe not the most, but certainly a lot.
Yeah, I think probably the other comparable one is was it Frankenputt, because that's a pretty straight bank shot one. But yeah, you're right. Now that you kind of put it that way, like, it's strip out the porta potties and you basically got a regular mini golf hole, long club with a couple humps.
Yeah, and I think that takes us like perfectly into now that we have Chelsea as our winner, let's chat with Matt here. And I think you've clearly been already like talking about golf and mini golf, and when we got introduced to you, we get to hear a little bit about your background in cheerleading, which we'd love to have you expand on. But let's start off, like, where's your entree to like the game of golf or mini golf? Like, what's your background in it?
So I grew up near some mini golf courses, 30 minutes away maybe, and in either direction. And it was, I loved it. I didn't know anything about golf. I thought golf was for stuffy people. But mini golf was fun. It made the whole thing accessible. And it did things I like mini golf. What I love about them is that it knows not to take itself too seriously. And this show is just that concept on steroids. So it's phenomenal. It's so simple, so genius. That was early. And then in some of my early to mid 20s business dealings, I had some friends that were starting to learn to play golf. So I picked up some clubs. I got all the new stuff, no training, just all the new gear. I wanted to look the part. Tiger was in his prime. And I was just ready to go. So, anytime I step up to the first hole, get my waggle, get my practice swings, and people think that I might, be competitive. And then I drive it and it goes 100 yards that way, 150 yards that way. And then they all know it's just for show, but I'm going to look good while I'm playing bad. So play on and off for the next, 5 to 10 years here and there. And then my stepdad really got into golf. He plays 3 times a week now. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's 82. So he gets it in. And it was a way for us to bond. It was something for us to, get out and just do together and have no like signature moments, but just be able to live together and enjoy time together, and be frustrated as hell together. So that's mostly my golf stuff. I would say I've played a lot more 18 holes of traditional golf than I have of miniature golf, but the kid inside me just comes out when you're on a mini golf course, and I just can't help it.
So how did you get on Holey Moley then? How did you find out about it? Like, for us, we were already in the world, so it came to us pretty quickly, but how did you get hooked into the show?
Well, I told them I was the most incredible mini golfer ever, and they just believed me.
That's the best way to do it.
Yes.
Why do you believe me? So when the first season came on and I was watching you guys, even before the first show aired, all the run up of the ads, and I turned to my wife and I was like, this show's made for me. right? I'm a mediocre golfer. I love doing stupid stuff for a laugh, and I just want to have a good time. So I told her that every single time, we're sitting on the couch at 8 o'clock every night watching this thing and saying, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. So towards the later episodes, they start putting up the information if you want to apply. So I jotted it down and I put it somewhere and I never looked at it again. And then my wife joined a parents Facebook group, and somebody in there was a casting agent, and they were casting Holey Moley, and open tryouts or open auditions were in Pasadena, which is close enough to drive pretty easily, on a Sunday. And my wife said, you're going to that. So I got dressed up in my Argyles and, all my colorful gear, and showed up, and it felt like it was made to be. So from that moment, they met me. They did what everybody does when they find out that I have some cheerleading experience, which is do a cheer, do a flip, do a this, do a that, right? And then within a week or two, it just felt like it moved that quickly to where it went from, hey, nice to meet you, to you're going to be on the show. Great. What a fun time.
Awesome.
And so 20 years of cheerleading, you talked about it a little bit on the show, but so how did you stay involved? Because I think most people would think of it as something you do in high school and you do it in college, but like how did you stay involved afterwards?
There's a whole professional side of cheerleading, providers and events and all these other things that are that cheerleading teams and individuals and groups need. So start at the beginning. I was a freshman in high school. I accidentally tried out for the cheerleading team, and I made it. They were taking all the guys. I was a scrawny little dude. I played all the traditional sports in the world, but this was really a challenge. My high school team was very competitive. So yeah, we did the sideline stuff, the traditional things, but I walk into the first practice and there's guys holding girls over their heads with one hand. They're standing on one foot. They're doing all this crazy gymnastics type stuff. And I'm like, I've never seen anything like this before, and I'm addicted before I get started. Never mind the fact that the first thing you do as a guy in cheerleading, they teach you a thing called a chair sit, where your hand is the chair. So also hooked that way. I cheered throughout high school. I got chosen to be on a summer camp staff teaching cheerleading. I got into college with cheerleading and eventually got a scholarship for cheerleading. During that time, I was coaching and choreographing, and I started making music for the teams that I was working with, which was a hobby that turned into something that paid me a little cash, which turned into my entire business. And so while I was still choreographing and coaching and judging and emceeing special events and all that stuff, I was running my cheerleading music business and working with, I think it was 7 or 8 countries, from Japan to Germany to Great Britain, the UK. And then I would say most of the states. We had at least one client in most of the states. And traveling the world, Canada, Australia, wherever they want to send me to do this cheerleading thing. So while after 27, I really didn't do much physically in the world of cheerleading, I was still right there all the way into it until I sold my business and jumped into real estate.
Nice. I had kind of a follow-up with that. So given that we brought you on for like a specific episode, we always, in a little bit later, we'll have you line up the episode with us. But I had to ask, like, who do you think would be the best cheerleader of all the people that played in this episode?
Funny you should ask that. So I did have an opportunity to meet some of the contestants backstage. For some reason, I didn't overlap with a lot of people, and therefore I didn't get a chance to meet as many people as I would have liked to. But two people that I really connected with were Chelsea and Coach V. So what I know is that Chelsea has a lot of gymnastics experience, which would make her naturally athletically a good cheerleader. But Coach V was, so I told you that I taught camps. Well, the camps that I taught, we went all over the world, and we had staff all over the country. And three of the guys that I used to teach camps with, and ultimately we all kind of rose up the cheerleading professional ranks together, were three athletes that were coached by Coach V. So he coached
small world.
He coached cheerleading in Florida, and we knew the same guys. And so we had like this reminiscing moment of like, oh my God, do you know Alex? Do you know? It was so cool.
That's awesome. That is super fun to hear.
So, Alex and Nestor and Carlos, if you guys are watching this, we were talking about you backstage at Holey Moley.
That's great. I love hearing, because for us, I mean, mini golf a little bit more of a business side for you, Tom, and what you do, but really for me, it's always been kind of secondary to my quote unquote real job all the time. But I mean, I do a lot of it. I do the tournaments and stuff, but it's just great hearing the people who are able to take what is both their passion and do something with it as their day-to-day job for as long as you did, and still be connected to it. And I mean, I got to imagine not only in that world, but also hopefully a lot of your clients on the real estate side have now seen you on Holey Moley and can be like, oh yeah, that guy, he's selling my house right now.
It wasn't a bad deal for real estate, I'll tell you that much. But any exposure is good exposure, but it certainly opened up some doors, which has really been wonderful since I didn't get the green jacket and the golden putter. But hey, what are you gonna do?
Welcome to the round two. Welcome to the round two losers club. We have that all in common here, is that we all lost in the second round on Holey Moley. I'm curious.
Did you lose to the eventual winner? I can't remember.
No, I didn't.
Matt, you did, right? Because
I did, yeah.
I lost to Diane, who ended up winning.
Yeah, I had the good fortune of being on the episode where all three finalists were like touring golf pros. So it's just like. Right. It was John Lee Pack and Laurel Gill and Jeff Barber, who ended up winning the episode, who I caught up with and got to play around with. They're all like been in golf, and I was just like, you know what? Like after I saw like the end of it, and then Laurel was like told me a little before, I was like, well, how did you end up doing? Like I'd met her. She's like, oh, I like won a putt off on the distractor and I had to match. And it was like, you matched on the distractor? Like that's talk about like a crazy putt to like match a 15-foot putt under pressure for TV. Yeah. So yeah, I didn't feel too bad of like losing on like teed off to like a golf pro who I currently am taking putting lessons from. So.
There you go. Well, when I found out how many people on the show actually had some tie to golf in a daily way or a professional way, I was like, this is pretty much just for fun for me. But it's, I'm going to give it my best, but it's likely not going to work out.
Well, Matt, I might as well jump into like the other question I had, and then we've kind of talked with everybody about. So you've watched a couple episodes now. And there is that like serious FOMO when you're on that set and you see everything and you're just like, oh, what are we going to play? And then they finally tell you. And then some level, no matter what you play, you're like, I kind of wanted to play that other one. What's the one that like really stands out that like you saw from afar? You're like, I want to play that one.
So obviously Uranus is just like, when they don't explain it to you, and it's just sitting there, you're like, what in the heck is that? But watching it, it's a little bit more straightforward, I think, than my mind would have led me to believe when I was out there. So that looked like fun, but I'm kind of split. I want to play Volcano. I know maybe that sounds crazy, but I want to play Volcano. I want to zip line. I want to see if I can stick like Terrence stuck, because I was sitting on the couch with my wife and we both went, what? You know, that was pretty epic the way that he stuck onto that. And it wasn't like grab, slide, hold, try. He was just glue. So that one, and the Plinko thing, the throwback to Price is Right. I mean, it's feel good. So I would love to play Volcano. But what I really, really want to play is hole number 2 again. I want redemption. Because I didn't even get knocked off with a door. Just my broad shoulders scraped and it threw my balance off, and it looked like I was giving up, but I promise I was trying hard. That water is cold.
Yeah, I know that. I know that all too well. That's pretty much the same body of water I went out on teed off, so I know it quite well. It's the same body of water. Correct me if I'm wrong. As Putt the Plank too.
It's almost everything is revolving around that body of water. Dutch Courage kind of is along the side, but it's the exact same body of water, just from the opposite side. They really ended the course this year.
Yeah, no, they went wild. I mean, last year there were 10 holes total. A bunch of them were not up by when we went out, and a couple of them had already come down, or there's only remnants of them when we all played. So yeah, like 18, that's just so many. And the question we sort of ask everybody is, if you had the chance, would you do it again? Would you play the course again?
Hell yeah. I actually already reached out to the casting director, and I was like, if you guys do an All-Stars episode, just call me. I'm ready.
We want a redemption episode.
I want a redemption episode. I mean, how many of us want redemption episodes? But I just want to try all these holes. I'll sign the insurance waivers. I'm fine with it. Let's go. They look so fun.
100%. I think that was the part for me. It was like, as soon as we landed on the set, that the stakes for me were always like, this is going to be cool to see and experience to have. But as far as like putting in tournaments experience, that I didn't really have much. And as soon as I saw it, all of a sudden the stakes just went through the roof, because it's like, oh, I have to play all this. This is like cooler than anything I could have imagined. And it was just like the wildest drug you could ever take.
For sure. And those gimme putts, no matter how gimme it is, you're still feeling the lights and the crowd and the stakes. So nothing out there. You don't take nothing. I'm going to formulate a real sentence. You don't take anything for granted out there.
I missed a 4-foot putt, and so did my wife, and so did our friend Robin. And people are like, how could you miss that? It's like, you don't get to practice. And you don't know what the break is. You just have to like go into it totally cold. And I mean, your putt, like on hole number 2, the one that went off the stall, like honestly, like it looked like it was going well, and it just like caught the edge there. If you hadn't caught the edge there, you would have had a pretty nice lineup, I think, like not too far from that little hump, and a nice shot possibly at a 2.
Not only do I agree with that, but if you watch it in kind of the slow-mo, you can see that my ball was kind of bouncing. I think it caught a little something on the way. And there were little strips of, 1 by 1 or something like that on the front edge of all the stalls. And it kind of caught the corner of one of those and carried off. Whereas I've seen some others that are still riding slow and smooth on the ground, where they will maybe glance off the edge and get pushed back to the middle. So I caught as much lack of luck on that as you possibly can. I swear those doors opened up way sooner than is necessary.
Yeah, I do wonder when I watched Chelsea and Tiger this week if they opened up really quick. And I think that gets us back to kind of like our regular feature on the show, which is the lining up the episode, where we kind of go through, talk a little bit more about the holes. And the first that we have in that category, and I'll let Pat kick it off, is best matchup.
I went with Kevin and Tiger on Double Dutch because they had the playoff putt off at the end. Tiger making the putt for the putt off. Kevin's that curl putt just reminded me, and Tom, you would know this hole. So when we play the USPMGA Masters, it's played at this course, Hawaiian Rumble, down in Myrtle Beach, and the 17th hole of that course is actually set up very similar in that the hole sits on the edge of a hill like that. So you have to come at it and kind of curl it up, and it's a difficult hole. It's like an ace, or like last year I had, in the 5 rounds I played, 4 aces and 1 9 on that hole. So that's like, if you don't hit it, it's going to come right back. So watching it kind of go up and then come back down just warmed my heart, because I've seen that type of putt a million times. But that was my favorite matchup. It just had the right amount of drama between the two throughout the whole hole.
What about you, Matt?
That was my honorable mention matchup. But my favorite matchup was the final round of Chelsea and Tiger. I think that they both, like I mentioned before, they both came in totally dry. They had been executing very well in most of their putting. And I think that they played from ahead in all their rounds. They weren't playing catch up, and that lent to a good matchup. And both of them had different challenges on their way to getting that final putt, or that final opportunity to putt, with Tiger going around and then Chelsea kind of coming up short in her first putt. The fact that they both made it through the run, I just was like, okay, it's going to come down to a putt, and it did. And it wasn't very far off. So that was the best matchup to me.
Yeah, I like that a lot too. One that would probably be an honorable mention was, and they didn't give it a lot of play, and a birdie told me that it went longer. We talked about this last week, that some of the holes go longer than get aired. But the Beaver Creek, I liked watching it this time because both of them, that Josh had a really good run at it down the middle, which is the one you're supposed to go at. But Tiger came down that left branch and supposedly made a long putt, although that might be, like, I think it might have been a putt off. But the fact that those two were going at it and they both made it through like the channel and putted that one pretty well, that was nice to see. So that would have been my honorable mention on that.
So like any matchup with Tiger in it is available.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And I don't know if this, so for the other thing lining up the episode, best putter putting, I don't know if there's anything different that needs to be said.
Well, I mean, I think I can separate the two and say the best putt to me was Kevin's, the curl that came back down. I think it was the most memorable of all putts, because everything else seemed like a pretty straight shot or like direct obstacles in the way. But I do think that overall the best putting was Chelsea's, because I mean she won, and every time there was a little bit of lag putting, she got so close, but she was always on the mark. Maybe just a little off with the power, but the line was perfect. And she put it in Uranus.
It's true.
We had in the special channel.
As it was put, I think she destroyed Uranus in 2 strokes, I believe was the quote.
Destroyed Uranus.
I think we glossed over this in the first round, but what I was a little bit even more impressed by with Chelsea was it didn't get it in the right place on Dragon's Breath, but getting it through on that first putt up a ramp, those like windows to get in while you're getting that fire hit at you. And let's just talk about the fact that likely no golfer or mini golfer has ever putted with that much gear alone, let alone the fire. So being the first person this year to get all the way through on the first putt, I thought that was super impressive too.
Yeah.
Pat, anything else?
if you want a challenge in terms of putting with gear on, if you haven't worn your kid while mini golfing, that'll give you a whole new aspect of how you putt, especially if you wear them on the front, because that really is just like, all right, how am I going to do this? I have some good pictures of both my kids, baby wearing them while playing. But I agree with you guys on the putting. I had both Kevin and Chelsea. Like, those were the stuff I had.
Yeah.
Keep it going, Pat. Let's go with the funniest moment.
I don't know. I cracked up at Lovitz this episode. Like, I cracked up on him the first episode too, but for some reason this episode, like, and I think it was a little bit because they had more of the back and forth that was put in between him and Riggle on it, that just made it a little bit better. But his whole set this time around, and I imagine, I mean, Matt, you had obviously limited time with him when you were on that hole, but wait, what, like, at what point did you know you were going to have him be there when you were doing that hole?
When I stepped up onto the boat.
That's awesome.
They just kept telling us special guest. And then there's John Lovitz as a pirate. And all my dreams were fulfilled.
You guys, what do you have for the funniest moment?
I'll take it. My funniest moment, anytime you can get sophomoric humor onto television in a clean, wholesome family sort of way, it's just gold. And when Joe shared that the producers gave him the disclaimer that Rob can't do any descriptions of Uranus, but then throughout the show, there was, the innuendo was a little more graphic than the first time that anybody played that hole. And I couldn't stop laughing. Running gag, you got me coming, you got me going. Every time Chelsea stepped up, which I'm grateful that she kept playing, because she just destroyed Uranus.
Well put. I've talked about this like through most of the season, that between the animations and the in between stuff with Regal, I really enjoyed that this season. And I think no more than this episode where Beaver Creek being the punching bag in like the interview with Steph Curry was so good. It's just like it's actually like a fine mini golf hole, but the fact that it was so inside baseball, but it's like it's buns and wieners. You just like took it and like spun it on its head. And I think they even referenced like they said that, and they talked about how much all the other holes costed. It was like a little bit kind of funny inside baseball that you don't expect on a show, that they're going to talk about the budget, because my wife and I have like worked in a fabrication shop and built some mini golf stuff. Like, we got to see the set. Like, immediately was just like, oh my God, we will never have the opportunity to build anything like this. Like, this is like multi-million dollar sets that are just like, hard to imagine anybody having the money besides like TV or movies to make something like that.
And the creativity to think about holes, not only that you could do, but that will work. And for this format too, you have to be able to follow it. And they just hit the pocket on everything.
Yikes. I'll let you take this one, Matt.
It was an easy call for me. It was Cynthia needing the medical help. That's scary for anybody who might have claustrophobia or issues with heat or just heavy clothes. That was a scary moment.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that she made it out of there okay, but I would be freaking out too if I was feeling short of breath and all stuffed in. Yeah, that's it. Overanalysis. Cool.
It seemed like Terrence was the easy one for me, going with a little bit more the humor.
What I was gonna go with.
That just was like, I mean, they called it out, but good on him. Like,
I watched it many times, especially the slow-mo replay. It's not as bad as it looks. He catches it on the inside thigh first. There's one angle where it shows. So, I mean, he still wraps himself hard on there. That could not have been comfortable, no matter what. But like, it wasn't a straight-on like Rochambeau from Cartman sort of deal. It was. But yeah, that was the one I was just. Yeah, but yeah, I can't imagine like having an anxiety attack on national television has got to be difficult, and I would not have wanted to bet.
And the padding that they use, I'm sure you guys can attest to it, is none too generous.
No.
If they skimped on the budget anywhere, it was on soft landings.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Pat came up with this category. Who do you want to have a drink with on this episode? I think you made our list on this because we're like, he seems like he's like got an interesting story.
Really, I didn't.
No,
I didn't, and I was actually. That's what made me reach out to you guys and say I would love to be on your show, because I'm like, if I'm not the damn one, I'm gonna make
really.
I'm gonna make them know that I'm fun.
Did we not? I swear that I think we. I mean, I think we're as like alums, just like curious and interested. As a thing we'll shout out later. People can see who all the other people are on the episode with you again, because we found out they're re-airing the episode next Thursday twice.
Somebody jump on Sharks the way it's supposed to be done.
You got the July 4th week re-air.
Yeah. So who we having a drink with other than Matt?
I'm having a drink with Josh's grandma. I want to know about her mini golf for $20 a round with their grandson. Like that, forget the contestants. That's what I want to know about right there. And I mean, they showed her. I mean, that it's also like she's hanging in there, because it ain't warm out there when you're watching everybody either. So my vote was for Josh's grandma this time around.
I didn't realize that we could go outside. I got to rethink my answer. See, Pat, I thought you might have gone with Kevin, because if you shave your head and you tighten up the beard a little bit, you would fit right in with his 3 sons.
I don't know. Well, yes, I would have fit in with his sons. But I personally don't know if I could have handled a motivational speaker having a beer with. That's not quite my style. I don't know if I could have handled a round or two at the bar with him.
It actually is very much my style. And I would love to continue on the conversation that we had started backstage. So Kevin would have been my pick, because just who knows how long those ties are.
I don't know that I thought this one out well in advance. I mean, probably love it. I feel like, because I'm gonna go off the board a little bit. And with no offense to anybody in the episode, I kind of want to have a drink with Lovitz, because he's so like.
I think you did on the first episode as well.
Yeah,
that's why we didn't want to drink with Matt.
No.
I mean, like it was, but there was some redeeming quality about the interview, and you're like, that makes me want to. And I said, look, as you guys mentioned on previous episodes of this high esteemed show of yours, that a lot of stuff ends up on the cutting room floor. And I was like, when I was watching it back, I said to myself, I'm a hell of a lot funnier than that. But that's okay, because they didn't use some of the parts that I didn't want them to use, which is good. You know, when you say that thing, you're like, oh my God, that's going to be the one.
That's the big thing they're going to use.
The one thing. And I'm never going to live it down from my parents or my in-laws or whatever. Great. But they didn't, so it was good.
Well, I think Matt covered this one, but we'll give him another chance on this if he's rethinking it. But what hole would you want to play? I think now seeing Uranus and like the full expanse of it and the other side of it, I'd really like to try it, see if I can get across those planets, and just to get to see a little bit more of like that massive sand trap. That sand trap on the other side, it's like no joke. It's huge. You could get kind of an overhead shot, and there's like space people and like a ton of sand and some little things. Like I'm curious if there's going to be anybody that like really ends up getting stuck over there, and you see someone like hacking around in the dirt. I have a feeling that would get cut out, but I think Uranus is on the list. As I've said almost every episode, putt the plank. Before we went out, I just had like this notion, if they're going to do this show, they need to have like people that lost walk a plank. And when I saw that for this year, I was just like, yes, this has got to happen.
I got a funny little story about putt the plank. If there's time, my wife, I don't live far from where we did the shoot. So, and if anybody doesn't know, we're shooting at the oddest hours. It's like 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. So it's cold, it's dark, and getting people to come out and support, even as a local, wasn't the easiest because of the hours. But my wife, she's a gamer, love her. So Sarah, she shows up, and the hole that I'm doing is putt the plank. And they bring the audience out and they put them in that area, and there's this shark circling, and she's losing her mind because Shark Week is a holiday in our house.
Ooh.
And that's her favorite animal. She knows damn near every genus and species and all the list. So
nice.
He's just over the moon at watching her husband jump on a shark. So yeah, I'd like to do hole number 2 again. Yeah, I'd like to try Volcano, but for the glory and for my lady, a happy wife is a happy life, I'll jump on that shark again.
The only one that's been able to take it all the way around and jump and land it, because Tanner had it last week and just missed that little raft to get on the other side. It doesn't seem forgiving.
It's not. The shark itself, the getting on there and then staying on there, that thing is moving a lot faster than I gave it credit for. Finding your balance to jump off. The crowd, I did pick out some voices in the crowd, and I was like, that might actually be a good idea. And you're trying to do that while you're standing on the head of a shark, doing circles. But that, I guess that raft or whatever we'd call it, that landing spot was like an 8-inch foam pad that we used to use in gymnastics to land, call it a crash pad. And there was nothing under supporting it. So when you landed, the whole weight of your body would push the raft into the water, and the top was slick. So it was very unforgiving. And I remember using as many ab muscles, the one that I've got, to just really tighten my body so that I was just working with, it almost felt like fingertips, very Spider-Man-esque, climbing up that thing. It was really difficult. I couldn't get my legs into it until I got almost my whole upper body and half of my lower body out of the water. And then I went to the chiropractor the next day.
Pat.
Dragon's Breath. Said the first episode, I want to come in all fully geared up, ride on a horse. Give me that. I'll take that type of stuff over the more physical aspects any day. But I just want to see what that's like, because for me, I think that I'd have no problem with the claustrophobic piece of it. I just want to experience what that's got to feel like when that envelops you in fire.
Okay, Pat, your power rankings.
Power rankings, Putting Penguin power rankings. So we've been doing this in my attempt to figure out, who's going to take home that $250,000. And because I'm a fan of everything Ringer, ESPN power ranking, it's my favorite articles to read. So as of episode 5, I had, going backwards, 5 up through 4, I had Ray from episode 2, May from episode 4, Tanner from episode 5, and Chris from episode 3, and Eric from your episode as kind of in the leader clubhouse of potential winners. And I'll have to say, I thought Eric was going to hold this for a while just because he had a really good mix of what he had to play, and it was a solid putter. But I'm going to put Chelsea number 1. All her putts were great, and she played a really physical set of holes because she had to do Uranus, she had to do hole 2, and Dragon's Breath, while it wasn't exactly physical, was the psychological side of it. So she covered all of the bases and excelled on all of them, and she's right up on top for me. It got a really good chance comparatively of getting to the end, and we're halfway through now, so we'll see what the other 6 bring, but I like her chances.
Agreed. I think that's. I was super impressed. I'd seen her in the trailers, and she just seemed to have all this energy. But I really liked her camaraderie with everybody that she played with. She seemed to be like an amazing sport. I got to say, that was the one note that I had about this whole episode, was that the camaraderie between the people out there is something I really enjoy. Like the trash talking, light trash talking is fine, but honestly, there wasn't, like, with few, very, 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 very few exceptions, people that we met that weren't like spectacular, and a bunch of the people are like we're now like great friends with. Like the all the people that we met, like, went back out this spring, met up with a bunch of them, and played some mini golf with people that were on my episode that I never met. Some of the people that I already met, and there are people in the mini golf world that we hadn't met. Hopefully, one of them, Marnie, I want to reach out to her and have her on an episode. She's already played a round with a friend of ours, Aaron El Presidente, who's in one of the future episodes. And just knowing that people are connecting and have these, this shared experience that sort of no one else has besides like the little over 200 of us that have competed between season 1 and 2 is, I don't know. I really like seeing the honesty of that moment versus like the put on, because for me, it really felt like that. Like I remember the first night on our big like tiebreaker night when people were going home and had advanced, and there was that moment where it was like, oh, I'm not going to see these people again, and we'd all kind of developed like a friendship over like some long nights already up to that. And I was like, oh man, that's like a bummer. And it put like very different stakes in it for me. So that was the thing about this episode that I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that people were like really supportive and really kind. And I really like that about you on the show, Matt, that like you were super, super gracious in both of your episodes. And that's something that like I hold still with this show, that it has like a special place where it's like fun competitive instead of like kind of mean spirited, which I worry that like a lot of reality TV goes into that in that realm.
Yeah, I felt it in the tent. Everybody was exceedingly nice and exceedingly interested in each other's lives, and making real connections that, like you guys have said, have carried beyond the taping and into some real life connections, which is great.
I want to shout out Mandy Ranslow, other half the Putting Penguin. Liked our visuals tonight using this new little gizmo on our new platform here, StreamYard. I'm really, really digging how this looks. And for end of the episode, go through some mini golf happenings. Couple of Putts has a new review that just went up at Castle Park, not too far from you. We put up the third course. Gave it a little lower review because I watched our friends from O Street, their video of them playing, and I forgot how frustrating the purple course is. So I gave it our second highest tier of review, but it's still a great course. We have some other things that'll be coming out next week. Encourage you to go check out a bunch of stuff by O Street Mini Golf that they just put up. I'm going to be watching a few of those tomorrow. And then, Pat, what do we have potentially coming up next week?
Next week, what do we have coming up next week?
Next week we don't have a new episode.
Well, we don't have a new episode. We're talking about mini golf stuff. We have the Putt 18 Matt World League starting next week, right? I gotta figure that out.
Is that next week?
I think it is next week.
Yeah, that would be before our next episode. You're right.
So, Matt, if you're not familiar, there's a wonderful company out of Australia called Putt 18. They make a putting, I guess, training mat is probably what it is, but it's a competitive mat. They've got a great design on it. And while a bunch of us were in quarantine, they started doing virtual competitions. So,
oh, cool.
You do your stuff on Facebook Live. You play against people. So we've been playing against folks. We represented Team USA. Geez, what was that, about a month ago? Against folks from the UK, New Zealand, Australia. So they have started a league now that you can be a part of if you have one of their mats. So we've got that coming up. Yeah, no episode next week. No new episodes. We have been watching Hardcore Mini Golf, which is put out on YouTube. Well, some episodes on YouTube, but most of it's on a paywall from this company, Rooster Teeth. It's a media company, does all sorts of stuff. So we've been watching that as well. think, are we doing that an episode next week, or maybe are we? Yeah.
I think that's the thought. That's what I was kind of hinting at.
Right.
Since
I can't keep all this stuff straight. You'd think like we're professionals on this thing.
Yeah, I'd almost forgot the other thing was that there's actually an artist designed mini golf course opening in St. Louis at the Sheldon Museum, which might be the only one. Robin and I had a hole that we had designed and that we've mostly built for a course that's not actually going to open until like an artist designed temporary course that won't happen until next year just because of the pandemic. And there's been another number of courses that were like temporary or planned that just the pandemic's put it off in addition to some closings. But yeah, so next week, the hope is, because it will be the third and the fourth episodes of Hardcore Mini Golf, the third episode's up right now on the paywall. And the fourth episode will have aired. We're going to try to do another episode of, we're going to need a bigger Windmill with Aaron Kaminsky and Randy Rice again. And so that means that our next episode of Holey Moley isn't going to be for a couple of weeks, but it's going to feature a one Chris Harrison from the Bachelor franchise with a Bachelor themed Holey Moley episode thing. It's called, I wrote down the name somewhere, something about a rose. Love at First Stroke.
Love at First Stroke. There better
Love
be
it.
lots of roses.
Yeah. Did you get to meet anybody that was competing on the Bachelor?
I did. I met 4 people who were competing on the Bachelor episode. They look fantastic.
Yeah, I was wondering where I saw a bunch of like clips beginning of the season. It's like there's people wearing like nightgowns and like suits. Like, what are they doing? Like these like weird characters. And now I'm like, huh. So are they gonna have like an episode where they're gonna try to like matchmake? So we'll see. It'll be an interesting thing, but we have a week in between new episodes next Thursday. So you can tune into us next Thursday night, but you can also tune into Holey Moley and watch our new friend Matt down here compete once again on Putt the Plank and hole number 2 on literally Jumping the Shark, the season premiere. So lots to watch over the holidays, but you'll see more from us. Any parting words from you, Matt?
When those of you who are watching this are watching the rerun of Holey Moley next week, reach out to me on my Instagram handle, which was right there but no longer is.
Bring it back up. Whoops, that's not it.
Right about now, reach out to me there and just say what's up, because this is not going to happen again in my lifetime, and it's just been a blast to interact with everybody, from people who said, hey, where'd you get your hat, or did you get to keep your pants, or oh my god, and I have had some people reach out to me and say your sportsmanship was really excellent. So just any love. If you got hate, you can keep it to yourself, but yeah, I would just love to hear from anybody and everybody who's a fan of the show, because that's now the fun. Since I know I'm not winning, the fun is watching other people enjoy the show. And the only other parting word is stay safe, love thy neighbor, and it's just be good, be the best you can be. And I think that's just a little bit of a slice for the times right now.
Yeah, 100%. I think we've said that a bunch of weeks.
I've been watching.
We be good to each other. Pat, do you have anything?
No, I mean, just echo that. As I know, depending on where you're in the country, although I think at this point, most of the places have had the mini golf courses open up. So a lot of those are small businesses out there. If you feel safe and want to get out, I know we've been to a couple of them, and it seems like people are all doing the right thing. So with the holidays and stuff coming up, take advantage of them when you can, if you think you can, and support this business, because they've obviously allowed us. It's those things and those small businesses that have grown to the point where we can have a show like Holey Moley on television.
Yeah,
it's true. Well, cool. We're going to be signing off. The StreamYard thing worked. We had no technical difficulties. We had some fun, and we're gonna. I'm gonna blame Matt and credit Matt for all of the things going right. He's been a fantastic guest. We thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week, I think.